Monday, December 9th, 4:45, with a quorum present in the chamber, and I'm calling this Human Resources Committee to order. It says on the agenda special meeting. It is not. This is our usual meeting time, date and time. Number one is approval of November 11th, 2024 minutes. They're in your packet. Any questions or concerns on the minutes? If not, I'll take a motion to approve. Motion by Killian, second by Gisselman. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Human Resources Report for November 2024. Those are in your packet. Any questions for our Human Resources Director? Seeing none, we'll put that on file. Number three, discussion and possible action to approve the proposal to expand Wausau Fire Department hiring criteria to include EMT, basic candidates, and implement an in-house paramedic apprenticeship program.
Excellent, thank you. I'm really excited to have this discussion. Appreciate your time and everything. Deputy Chief Palouse is here. He's kind of the one behind this, thinking outside the box and helping our team come up with ideas of how we can solve our recruitment retention issues. So with that, I'm going to have him give you guys a presentation and the short notes that he's prepared for you. Thanks.
All right, well, thanks for the opportunity. So basically, as you are well aware, that the Wausau Fire Department is experiencing a staffing shortage. Currently, we have 10 vacancies out of our 66 line staff. So that creates a burden on the staff. It also resulted in overtime this last year. So despite some of our recruitment efforts, from April, we were only able to hire one firefighter paramedic with their certifications that met all our requirements that are currently in place. So there is a series of other, you have to have firefighter 1, EMT basic, and be at least enrolled in a paramedic course right now to apply. So this proposal would do is it would eliminate the requirement to have your paramedic certification or currently be in paramedic school to be able to apply, which then would create a much larger pool of applicants that would be maybe just beginning their journey in the fire service. They've already completed their EMT basic, they've completed their firefighter 1, but they haven't enrolled yet in paramedic. And that would allow the Wausau Fire Department to hire more on character than certifications. And the idea of how this would be implemented would be to partnering with NTC. NTC has an online paramedic program that begins mid-January of this year, of 2025. And it's a hybrid course of both online coursework and in-person coursework. It'd be two-hour sessions a week in person at NTC's campus, and the rest of it is all online. So unlike what Wausau Fire did last year with their cohort of paramedic students, those paramedic students were 40 hours a week attending just school. They weren't used for staffing. This apprenticeship program would incorporate the best of both worlds. It would allow these candidates that don't yet have their paramedic to attend paramedic school, those 2 hours, those two-hour sessions a week, plus while they're on shift, and they would also be counted as staffing during their year of schooling. It takes about a year of paramedic schooling and an additional 1,200 hours of clinical time. They would be able to get that clinical time while they're on shift. So I know some of the questions were raised whether would this be an increase in overtime costs. There wouldn't be an increase in overtime costs because their schooling is being done mostly while they're on shift. And if those 2 hours of in-person classroom fall on one of their non-shift days, that schooling is part of the conditional part of their employment. So in the proposal that you saw, there was something labeled early engagement benefit, which is essentially a sign-on bonus. And it's provided by adjusting the wages of a contractual one-year firefighter EMT. By giving them a $10,000 early engagement benefit and a $5,000 tuition credit, that comes off of what normally a one-year firefighter would make. So it really isn't an increase in cost. It's just adjusting that contractual one-year firefighter's salary. And then that also, by providing that benefit, that tuition credit and that early engagement benefit, it allows the city to have a mechanism for recruitment, to find recoupment if that individual did not complete their paramedic coursework, or if they weren't able to, or if they didn't maintain employment with the Wausau Fire Department. So it kind of acts as a retention tool as well as a recruitment tool as well. So, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have on the proposal. Yeah.
What happens if they don't pass that EMT course?
So, the last cohort that Wausau trained, we had 100% success rate on the first take of the National Registry test, which is really remarkable. So we have a history of making sure that they're obtaining the education that they need so that they pass that test. They'll be working with the division chief of EMS, and they'll also be assigned a field training officer that will work with them throughout the course to make sure that they are prepared to take that registry test. And that's one of the benefits of offering that early engagement benefit and that tuition credit, because if they don't pass, and if they'll get multiple chances to pass, but if they exhaust all their attempts to pass the National Registry test, then there's a recoupment. We can recoup the cost of what it costs to send them, to train them for that 1 year by requiring that $10,000 early engagement benefit and that $5,000 tuition credit.
And how are we going to get that back if they don't want to write us a check?
I believe we've had situations in the past where we had employees that left employment with Wausau that were required to make a payment back to the city. And I'm not exactly sure how that was worked out. I know some of it maybe had been taken out of what they may have received in vacation leave and benefits. So subtracted from their last paycheck.
Okay. And my other question is, when you have a one-year firefighter starting out, before this, they have to have their firefighter and their EMT up to this point, correct?
Currently, they have to have firefighter 1 certification and their EMT basic and be at least enrolled in the paramedic program.
Okay, so why would we be giving them that high of a bonus when all they have is their firefighter? They don't have the rest of it, like your one, you're basically giving them what a fully trained person would get coming on, because you're giving the rest of it in bonuses, correct?
Well, some of it, they still would have to pay for their tuition, but they're getting a portion of that tuition as a credit. They're getting the other portion in that early engagement benefit. So they're still, after they pay for school, they're receiving less than a one-year firefighter or starting firefighter with their paramedic. So they would still be receiving slightly less. So, and then if you look on that last page of the proposal, there is a chart on what their hourly rate would be.
So that,
Figure it out. So,
thank you.
yes.
I understand the need to expand your recruiting efforts, and I appreciate all the work that you have put into this proposal. I do have a couple of concerns, though, right now. City debt is critical, and your proposal does not tell us how much this is going to cost the city. And I don't know that we can move ahead without that kind of specific information.
Sure.
And also, I had the concern that the proposal says that if they leave the program before their 3 years are up, that they will be required to reimburse the city. And with other types of businesses, I don't know how that has ever been guaranteed or accomplished. So I think my concerns for this proposal are financial responsibility for the city, and it just doesn't feel like we've been given enough complete information in that regard.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer your question on what the fiscal impact would be. It's because this isn't any in addition to any positions that we already have available to us. It's basically changing the requirements to fill those positions. So we're not adding any additional positions. They already are budgeted positions. They're budgeted positions actually for that second line, the in-contract 2025 start firefighter wage. So this wouldn't increase our salary line because we're not adding any additional positions. Essentially, it's changing the requirements so that they don't have to have their paramedic to apply.
And how do we guarantee that the city will be reimbursed if they leave early?
It was a similar question. I guess I don't have a 100% answer on how that would exactly happen, other than I know that the city has sought reimbursement from employees that did leave. Because most recently in the last group of students, that some of them left before their 2 years were up, and then they had signed an agreement with the city when they first became employed that they would be responsible for some of their tuition costs and the cost of their outfitting them with the turnout gear. So they have had a mechanism of doing it in the past. I just can't speak
Don't
to
know what
exactly
it is.
how.
I know it's been my experience in other business types of situations that when that's a requirement, the city could take them to small claims court and they could put a lien on their wages if they leave. But it's been my experience as well that isn't very successful. So that is a concern for me.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, on the recouping the costs of training, of education, one of the things the city does have that other businesses don't is we have the ability to make tax liens. So if they get tax refunds in the future, that's something that can be garnished through the state. So we do have that ability. I think on its face, I think this is a really good idea. Apprenticeship programs work in other trades, so it's a proven educational model. So one benefit of an apprenticeship program is that when a person is enrolled in that training program, the company pretty much has them locked in for the duration. And when their contract is up, there's a higher likelihood that that the company or in our case, the department will be able to keep that person as they've gone through the apprenticeship program and become a fully fledged firefighter paramedic. So I do like this. I know there are concerns about the financing element of this, but I think on its face, this is something we need to do in order to attract new firefighters into the service, where competing departments like Safer, they'll Riverside, they'll take EMT basics, and if you can get a job, at another department in a similar wage rate, or you can get a job with Wausau with the benefit of furthering your education through an apprenticeship program, I see there would be a certain advantage to that.
I think Vicki.
Well, I guess my situation is I don't think that they would be furthering their education through WASA because the rest of these departments would already have that requirement in place that they have their paramedic EMT, I would think. If they've got an ambulance, they've got to have at least their EMT, minimal.
Can I speak to that? Sure. So we are seeing a trend in the fire service from, back when Chief Kopp and I first applied, there would be, 100 people applying for a few select jobs. And at that time, you had to have your associate's degree or at least 60 college credits, plus a whole host of other certifications and licensures. Now, unfortunately, that's not the case. The candidate pool is much smaller, so you're seeing more and more departments move away from requiring paramedic and doing something similar to this. They're not calling it an apprenticeship program, but they are bringing somebody in at an EMT level, and they're paying for the tuition costs, and they're doing it without calling it an apprenticeship program. I know the city of Stevens Point just passed a referendum this last November to add 9 additional firefighters to their roster. I'm not sure, they did inquire with us on if we do currently hire, if we have any policy language on hiring just EMT basics without their paramedic certification. So that leads me to believe they may go down the same route. The city of Wisconsin Rapids, where I was the division chief there a year ago, they have gone this route as well as hiring EMT basics. So I think it's going to be a trend you'll see in the fire service.
Right, and what I'm saying is Wausau is not going to be any different than these other cities. Volunteer departments, you have to have your EMT or your first responders. Obviously, you don't have to have all of that schooling, so, minimum, they have to have that to go on an ambulance call. But as far as Wausau being ahead of the game, I don't think that's the case. I think Wausau is coming into the game trying to do that. As far as filing liens, most companies can file liens at least against their paychecks. I know we do it because I work in collections, so we take people to court, we can file liens on them. I don't know about if the city can actually do that with a tax return. That's something new to me, but I know you can file liens against a paycheck. But yeah, I have concerns about getting that money back as well, because I also have seen that happen where people never pay even though there is a lien out there. So that's my take.
Thank you. I noticed on the reports that there were 10 resignations, I think, this year. I think that was part of the report, and you're currently 10. Is there a commonality here with regard to firemen leaving the fire department, wages? I'm not sure, but it seems like it's competition from safer, from I'm not sure, but if there's a commonality of some sort that we should be thinking about, that we should be enhancing the fire department, I think we should know about that. I don't expect an answer right now, but I would think that if there's a common thread amongst those 10 in leaving, I know that there was some retirements as also part of the report. I was just kind of curious about that. In the report, it said that, I got the impression that training would be done at the fire department, but that's not necessarily true. The training will be done at the tech and online type of thing. That's what I'm hearing tonight.
It would be a combination of both. The NTC course, we were hoping originally to be able to do just the paramedic course solely in-house with our instructors that have had a history of teaching paramedic. When we met with NTC, they informed us that would go against their accreditation policies to have, because it wouldn't be inclusive to all students, to have it just solely for Wausau Fire Department employees. So they would be enrolled there, therefore they would be enrolled in the paramedic program that's offered at the tech college. So that would require them to have those 2 hours, 2 sessions of 2 hours a week in person in the class, and then the rest would be online, and they would do that at the fire department when they're on shift. They would work on their coursework, and then they would also be working with that field training officer on shift during their normal shift, making sure that they're progressing like they should be through the course.
So that training is done by how you say, field
Training officer.
field training?
Yep.
And will this be more obligations on that person's part then to being, as opposed to being taken away from other duties that they're doing now, for instance?
So we have a field training officer already assigned on each crew for when we have a new hire, even if they come in with their paramedic. So they're normally working with already a licensed paramedic and making sure that they're understanding how Wausau's protocols and how we respond to medical emergencies. So that position's already there. They're already normally working with a new hire, so it wouldn't be an additional position. Plus the division chief of EMS, that's part of his responsibilities too, to make sure.
And with regard to the payback, if somebody leaves like after 3 years, I mean, the city of Wausau has had that for years, and I'm sure it's just not the fire department, police department, city hall, any kind of certification that we would continually pay for, or that we would want people to get educated for. I'm sure we have that do we not have that payback in for continuing education?
No, it's not for all, just like the recently passed certification pay for Wausau Water Works. They're not signing anything that says they pay any of that back. It's just now we started with the CDL, so it's very sporadic, but it's not all inclusive.
Should that not be a part of the handbook at some point in time? I would think that we would, as part of I'm a strong supporter of continuing education, and I think that we need to be providing that throughout the city with regard to all of our employees. If it takes some continuing education to enhance a person's work here in the city, I would think that we would be in a position to give continuing education, and as part of that continuing education, I would think that there would be some type of a way that they would be guaranteeing 1 year work staying with the city of some sort, but I think that should be really a big part of our employee handbook. I'm not sure if that's part of the union agreements or not, but I feel very strongly about continuing ed. And if the city's paying that, I think we have some obligation to get that, have some type of callback from that.
I'm the police chief, not the fire chief, just in case anybody was wondering. But I think I can provide maybe a little bit of clarity historically. When we hire new officers that we put through the academy, which is 720 hours, they're paid to attend. It's 100% at the technical schools. Upon hire, they sign an agreement with the police department in the city that includes paying back some of the expenses for the equipment that they get, which is, it's for them. It's not going to be issued to someone else, like body armor that you sweat in. We don't give that to the next person. It's all custom fit. So that's usually between $3,000 and $5,000. And then if they were to sever employment with us at their choice to leave and go somewhere else during a 3-year period of time, over those 3 years, their obligation to repay that to us is prorated, depending on how long they had been with us at that point in time. We would send them an invoice, which we have done in those circumstances. If they choose not to pay, then we would utilize, I think I heard Alder Killian mention the small claims system, like that's what we would do, and we would get a judgment against them. We're not going to send the police to like shake them upside down and get the money out of them, but it is a judgment that follows them. And I think to Alder Martin's point, when we have individuals that owe in fines and in forfeitures to the city, that is the scenario in which there is a vehicle to be able to tax intercept for those individuals, but not to fulfill their contractual obligations with us. And to Mr. Gisselman's point, and then I'm going to sit down because I'm the police chief, not the fire chief. I think there's absolutely value for individuals that we allow and we do tuition reimbursement. I know that's been a topic that's been discussed here, to have an expectation that if the city of Wausau is paying someone's tuition, that there be an obligation that we recover some of that in the form of their commitment to work for us for a period of time or be forced to reimburse that. Alternatively, we do continuing education with all of our staff. It's mandatory to even maintain your certifications, and we would have to sign contracts with our staff every 2 or 3 months expecting some kind of, and that's just not the industry standard, at least within the police department. But if you were to pay for my PhD and me graduate and you say, congratulations, Dr. Barnes, and me be like, here's my resignation. I think in a scenario like that, expecting some type of contractual commitment would be appropriate. Thank you.
Chief, so you did give a scenario of some type of, after a certain amount of time working, some reimbursement of some sort. So
Correct.
So have we been pretty good that way? I mean, when people leave, or are there, you don't,
I mean, there's a couple of scenarios. We have been reimbursed. They signed a contract, they know they signed a contract with us, and if they choose to leave to go somewhere else, and the easy way to look at it from a math is if it's $6,000 that they'd owe us and they worked for us for a year, a third of it is forgiven and it's prorated, and they would owe us $4,000. And so on, depending on the amount of days that existed there. Not sure if that answered your question or not.
no,
We haven't had to go to small
generally we
claims
get
with
that.
anyone.
Generally, we would get what they promised back.
Yeah, the only circumstances in which I have enjoyed as the administrator of the police department, if I want someone to leave, it costs way more than the reimbursement for me to terminate someone's employment. We hire attorneys, they go to the PFC through a hearing process. It takes months and months. I have sat down with individuals where we negotiated their resignation, and one of the things I've negotiated away is, you've been here 2 years, it's not a good fit. I'll forgive the $2,000 that you would owe us in that contract if you resign effective immediately, and we've had success with that scenario, where that's just a math equation for me. It costs $10,000 to go to termination, or I can forgive $2,000 and you resign. That's worked out in our favor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I've got actually two issues that, and again, it kind of sounds like bird walking, but it's really not. But it's kind of, number one, if you're 20, 21 years old, are you willing, you have a wife or a spouse, I'll say a spouse because it could be either gender, you're coming into this place, getting a job, and the first thing you hear is that if I don't stay here for 3 years, I'm going to owe them 10 grand. How are you going to, how willing are you going to be to commit to 3 years now? 3 years is a long time. In this day and age, that is a long time. Your spouse could get a job somewhere else. There could be a death in your family, and nothing, all of this stuff, none of that matters, And I guess the other thing that I wanted to say is I would be really careful about these things in public safety, because an accountant or an HR person can come to work and hate their job every day, and you're really probably not going to really work. But do you really want a policeman or a fireman saying that, hey, I'm really not cut out for this, but I don't want to pay back $5,000 either, so I'm just going to try to stay here for 3 years? Who's really going to pay that bill? And is it really why? And I understand what people are saying, that you don't want people just taking advantage of the city and leaving. But at some point, you've got to look at the citizens. What are they getting in return? Are you getting someone that hates their job, doesn't really want to be here? You just can't have public safety employees like that. Whereas other careers, you can do that. But do you really want public safety employees that are here just because they don't want to pay back something that they got from when they started?
I think my take on this is that it should be prorated. If you're giving somebody $10,000, you're giving them an education, and they're going to leave after they get that education because they can make more money at Safer, then they should have to do a prorated payment back. Because you are going to also get those individuals that hear 10 grand and I don't have to pay it back, I'm there. And you will get those individuals. You got a 21-year-old, like you said, and you're flashing $10,000 in front of them, and they stay a year and they don't like it and they don't have to pay anything back. That's not a good situation for the city to be in either. A prorated, yeah, okay, they were here for a year and a half, and it just isn't a good fit. Okay, you pay $5,000 back. But I think to walk free would be a mistake because there's no consequences. There is at least that, that drive to give it a good shot, to not just have a bad day and say I'm out, but to really put some effort into it too, because you are going to get those applicants that are going to maybe not be so favorable, maybe not have the commitment. But if they have a commitment to pay back, they'll really give it a shot. You know, that can be, your scenario can be taken either way.
So if I could speak to a couple quick points, a little history with our last cohort that we did with the paramedic program, where we put 7 people through paramedic school in conjunction with NTC. We did have a prorated payback portion to build off what Chief Barnes said a little bit. And some of them that left, we were able to recoup 75%. So if they stayed for 2 years, it'd be 50%. If they stayed for 3 years, it'd be 25% of those tuition costs. And some of the other costs that were included as far as equipment and gear and stuff like that goes. So we have done this in the past with our last cohort to the degree of what we're speaking to here, and just like what Chief Barnes said with the PD. And the other point I wanted to put out there as we were just talking, I was listening to the great discussion here, is not forgetting that we're looking at giving people an opportunity who wouldn't normally have an opportunity to do the job that they always wanted to do. And we have a few people at the fire department now that got that opportunity with our last cohort, that they had a family at home and they're married and they had a job and they couldn't afford to quit their job and go to school to become a paramedic or a firefighter. And now they had that opportunity, and they're working out really well. And, they're not necessarily, just your young 20, 21-year-old. Now we're looking at giving people who, have a little life experience and another opportunity to do what they always dreamed of doing and didn't think they could because of different challenges that were up in their life. So I want to put that, add that to the element also, to the discussion, so.
And Gary, is like your continuing ed, yeah, I think that the city should do that. There's a lot of professions that require continuing ed to keep their licensure. And if that's a requirement for the police department, for the fire department, then yeah, I mean, you don't want somebody that's there for 5 years. They got to go in and get some CEUs. We should pay for that. So I'm on board with that.
Any other questions or concerns about this proposal? I guess I'm all for apprenticeship programs. I've been a positive thing on apprenticeships in other areas that haven't caught on, like DPW. I think that the hiring area is stretched, and we need to do this. I guess if you could go over how this works with the pay. They get a pay, and then I don't understand the bonus part. I don't understand how much that is. And my second question is, we're talking about 4 hours in person at Tech a week, and then a certain amount of hours online at the police or at the fire department. How many hours are they actually, because then it said when not in class, we're going to integrate them in daily department operations. How many hours specifically do you think will be left over for those type of scenarios?
I'll speak to the hours part first. So yeah, they'll have their in-person class hours, 4 hours per week that they'll have to attend at the campus. The rest of their coursework is kind of, it's almost kind of self-paced, but they're going to be encouraged to do that self-paced while they're on shift, while they're working, from 6:45 a.m. till 6:45 a.m. Then they're at the end of their shift. They're going to be starting January 25. They're going to be working 48 hours on, followed by 96 hours off. So during that 48 hours, there should be ample amount of time for them to complete their coursework, to be mentored by the FTO on their coursework. So in full disclaimer, when I got hired on Wisconsin Rapids 20 years ago, This is how I completed my paramedic program. I was on shift. I was sent to Mid-State Technical College during the day to complete my in-person class, but then the rest of it I got to do while I was on shift. And then I was able to apply immediately what I learned in class to working on that ambulance that same night. So I think it's going to really enhance their educational experience. So it's hard to say exactly how much of their shift is going to be spent on paramedic coursework. Typically, when they start their shift at 6:45, they have a morning briefing, and then following that morning briefing until 4:30 p.m., they're working on training in the department already. So they're already used to having those hours dedicated to training, and those hours will now be dedicated to their paramedic coursework. As far as the pay, what we modeled was taking what it would normally cost so that there wouldn't be an increase in cost of this for this program to operate. So what we did was we took what normally would cost for us to hire a firefighter with just their EMT basic, and then subtract that yearly salary of $10,000 to be able to provide that early engagement benefit, and then subtracted another additional $5,000 to give to that apprentice to use for their tuition. So that's how we came up with those costs, so that when you add those to if you added those two benefits to their yearly salary, it would be the exact same of what we would pay somebody that with starting off as a 1-year starting firefighter EMT basic.
So my question would be then, is this modeled after another apprentice program in another area or anything with the pay and the things?
No, the pay kind of came about in a way to try to, so that if we did just pay somebody just that normal, what you see is $60,960, if we paid them and then we provided them to go to paramedic school and they did decide to leave in 1 year, we had no way to try to recoup the costs that it made it harder to recoup some of the costs that we incurred by training them to go through school. So this was designed for the two reasons: one, to try to make it attractive to the apprenticeship program, but also provide a recovery, a means of recovery and recovering those monies spent on training that apprentice. So that part we didn't really model after anybody.
If I could also add, some of the time that Deputy Chief Plus and myself has spent going to the technical colleges, talking to EMT classes and paramedic classes of the sort, for many different reasons, but kind of a recruitment tool, but also throwing some of these ideas past them, and talking to them about what our future plans would hope to be and stuff like that. We're getting quite a few phone calls and a lot of follow-ups, some emails, probably, 10 to a dozen in the past couple of weeks, asking us if we're moving forward with this type of program and asking more questions about it. So there is definitely interest when we're talking to the technical school students about this. So I would just add that also. Yeah.
I just have one more question about the pay. Essentially, you are hiring people who are not as educated and without the experience. You're subtracting the $15,000 from their normal wages, but they're still getting it. So essentially, you are paying uneducated, unexperienced people the same thing as you would someone who is as experienced and educated as the other people. Is that correct?
Yes and no. So our contract language specifies what each licensure gets you for certain pay. So our paramedics make, for instance, 7% more than an EMT basic does, right? So, and then so on and so forth with different levels and years of service. So this would be the same as what's in contract right now as what a EMT basic with the lowest amount of certifications would get paid. So they're not getting paid as much as most of our people are getting paid with all their certifications. So there is a different pay grade I guess, but, so that's kind of my yes and no. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think it's an extremely generous program. I mean, I can only make my decisions based on what my life experiences have been, and I've been in the medical profession, which requires continuing education. I've had to pay for it myself, and I have had to take time out of my own life to do it. I couldn't do it at work, online, or be sent to school. And in the business world, I had to pay for, and everyone I know has to pay for their own continuing ed. So I understand the need for this, but it feels like the costs to the city are extreme. It does to me. And I understand all of the ins and outs that have been placed in the proposal. And I appreciate the proposal and the need for the recruitment efforts, but the costs still are a concern for me, for the city. So-
And, well, just to clarify, those costs, I mean, one way or the other, we do need to fill the positions. So, those costs are going to be there, whether it's us helping them get to that point or hiring the few and far between that already have all the certifications, which is the struggle for us right now. So, I mean, the costs are going to be there no matter what, as long as we can still fill those positions. We're just looking for ways that we can fill these positions and enlarge our pool a little bit where we can hire for character like we always have and always will do, but just to make the pool a little bit bigger and to compete with a lot of other departments that only hire basics that we never get to put our eyes on or talk to because they don't have the certifications to apply in Wausau, which would open up those opportunities. And you spoke a little bit to life experience, and I'd like to add a little bit about that too. In 1997 through 1999, I went to school in Madison on my own to get my associate's degree in fire science. I was lucky enough to get into Fitchburg Fire Department with their internship program, which meant I didn't have to pay rent. I lived at the fire station for 2 years. Justin did it 6 years after I did at the same exact fire department, and we just learned that as we met each other, that we were both in the same program, and that was a life experience I wouldn't trade for anything. That made me realize what I wanted to do for a living and not just do it on a volunteer basis for my community that I lived in at the time. So these are the types of things that shape lives and enhance people's passion to do certain things. So I would add to that as far as the life experience would go.
Thank you.
I guess I just want to bring up, because it's all kind of been mixed in, that the minimum hiring requirements, these people aren't coming in without anything, correct?
That should be in the
Right.
It is.
front page.
I just want to make sure
There's
that
still
we.
requirements.
Right, so they're just not WASA's current requirements. Correct. So they're not coming in without any background in firefighting or EMT, correct? So they do have some training that WASA is asking for this, and what we're going to do is just help them get up to this to everyone else. But they're not coming in, like, we're not recruiting from the high school, right? I mean, I just want, because I think it's all been kind of mixed in. And so they do have the state of Wisconsin firefighter, right? Firefighter 1 certificate, and then they have the EMT basic license.
Correct.
And then what we're trying to do is hire at the minimum where maybe other departments start out, and then we help them get to where we would like to see them. I think the other good thing about that, and I've always said about apprenticeship programs, is we're training the way we want them to train. I think that's, I bring up DPW again, with the CDLs and everything, we're training in what we would like to see, and I think we get the better employee that way, instead of how they're trained and then they have to learn a new department's way of doing things. But I guess I just wanted to make sure that was public, that they're not coming in raw. They already have the minimum that some departments are saying that's fine with us. We're just trying to get them to the WASA level, correct?
That's correct. Those are great points. And one thing, maybe a little background for you all too, is, we run a minimum paramedic level service where other departments, pick and choose what calls they go on at that level and sometimes respond at EMT level compared to a paramedic level. We're always sending at least 2 paramedics on each call that we send an ambulance out. So the level of service in Wausau is definitely one that is on the higher end of services in townships throughout the state and the country for that matter.
I just have 2 more questions. How soon do they get that bonus after they start? The 10,000 and the 5,000?
I think once we got through all the hiring conditions and everything was taken care of, it would be immediately so they could start paying their tuition and use that money or put that money away for an emergency account or whatever they choose to do, but I would think it would be immediately.
Okay. And my second question. Gary had said that there was 10 people that were lost and some were to retirement. What were some of the other reasons that we lost firefighters, paramedics?
So working really close with HR to make sure that we go over exit interviews and things like that when people leave. A lot of them left most everyone that left has never really said a bad thing about the Wausau Fire Department. We had 2 youngsters that left because they got married and their wives were accepted into residency school to be doctors. And that they get placed wherever they get placed in the nation or the state, so they had to move in order for their spouses to continue on with their dreams. Another one moved closer to his parents on the west side of the state, or the east side of the state, I should say. And like you said, there was a few retirements, and then we had one that went through that class that actually said, I didn't realize we were going to have to work this hard, and he actually just quit. So, those are the ones that sometimes that's going to happen, right?
Right.
But
Those
for
are
the most part,
those
we're
are the ones I'm
successful.
worried about paying the money back.
Well, yeah, and I mean, again, hiring for character and re-emphasizing the fact that the 6 students that we put through that cohort actually were the top 6 students in the NTC class out of 30-some with their scores. And, they were, from what we understand from the instructors at NTC, a lot of the other students were intimidated by them because of how far along they were compared to, doing it on your own. So, we don't mess around. It's just like training any sort of firefighter or paramedic in the Wausau. We take it pretty serious.
We have a motion to approve?
I'll second that.
Second. Any other further questions or comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Opposed? I'm sorry, I didn't hear. 1?
No.
Okay. You're opposed.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm hearing no. So, okay.
No, I will.
Okay, thank you. We have it. It is 4 to 1 that passes.
Thank you very much.
Don't disappoint us.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next item is closed session. If someone could just read that for me.
I'll do it. I'll make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to 19.85, paragraph 1, sub F, considering financial, medical, or social or personal histories of specific persons which, if discussed in public, would likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data for the purpose of considering leave of absence requests exceeding 30 days for one employee.
Okay, second. Thank you. Second by Gisselman. Roll call vote. Gisselman?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes?
Martins?
Aye.
Yes.
Yes. And I am aye as well. We will be coming back into open. Thank you.